Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to The 3-Month Vacation. When I was 20 years old, I was part of an advertising agency. And they had a big celebration. It was the 25th anniversary, and the CEO stood before the room. There were 200 employees listening to his every word. At that point, he gave a speech and said that he had to make sacrifices. And somewhere along the way, he also mentioned that he had to sacrifice part of his family life. His daughter stood beside me, raised her eyebrows, and said slightly sarcastically and softly, "Yes, that's right." But was she being sarcastic? Or was her feedback simply ignored? As we go through life, we want to succeed, yet often this so-called success comes at a high price. It's at times like this that we get feedback. This feedback is from a very reliable source, your family. The feedback is almost a foolproof method to know if you're overworking and you need to pull back. And age doesn't matter, because the input can come from the tiniest member of your family. I have a friend who lives in Eastern Europe, and we were on holiday with his family when his 7-year-old daughter said that she wanted to tell us something. She said, "Papa drives me to school every day, but I never get to speak to him. He's always on the phone talking to some client." This is the feedback that the parent never heard from that 7-year-old. Or maybe he did, but didn't pay attention. We don't always pay attention to this kind of input because we feel that we are working hard. We have been told for us to be successful, we must put in the hours. So we do our best to reach our predetermined goals. These goals also earn us a reasonable income. This in turn enables us to put the kids in a good school, to travel, and to live a more comfortable life. If someone suggests that we're working too hard, we push back against feedback. However, the feedback keeps trying to get through our defenses. And when the feedback comes, it can do so without warning. Many years ago, when my niece Kira was just 5, she played in the house with my other niece, Marcia. They were both very young and high-spirited. I didn't need to participate in their crazy games, so I decided to lie down on the sofa. Kira suddenly stopped. She came across to the sofa. She took a long look at me and said, "Shawnee is always tired." Then, without hesitation, she turned round and continued her game. However, her words struck me like a thunderbolt. Was I always tired? Even at the age of 5 or 7, a child can tell you that you are overworking. If you pay attention, you will hear the feedback from others too. Your partner, your parents. They all know when you're overdoing something. The family becomes the most significant source of feedback. However, it's not just work that gets your family's attention. It could also be a hobby that's taking up too much of your time. Recently, Renuka told me that I'd been spending too much time with French. She said I'd been talking in French in my sleep, and then one night I said, "Oh, I don't know how to say this in French." And this was all while I was asleep. I didn't take it as feedback, since she just mentioned these incidents in passing. But then one Wednesday, I started to get a slight headache, and that headache persisted. I wasn't sleeping very well and waking up tired. When Renuka touched my head, she said it was hot. Usually my head only gets this hot when I conduct intense courses, like the article writing course. These courses are pretty full on, and I have to put in quite a bit of time and energy. It was a bit worrying that my head was heating up so much. Clearly, I had been spending a lot of time, an enormous amount of time learning French. It wasn't just learning the language early in the morning and in the middle of the day. I was at it when I was driving, walking, and then chatting with AI in French in the evenings. When Renuka said I was probably overdoing my French, I did what many of us do. I gave an avalanche of logical reasons why I needed to put in much more effort if I wanted to learn the language. If I wanted to be successful, I would have to work harder. I discounted the advice. I focused on the task at hand. After all, how was I supposed to achieve any sort of success with a half-hearted attempt? There is a difference, however, between something half-hearted and one that's over the top. When trying to reach a goal, we are keen to make it work. At first, we tend to get encouragement from our friends, from our relatives. But it's the closest family that has a very good handle on the pulse of your activity. They seem to know when you're doing too little, just enough, or too much. When it's too little, they will let you know. And it's when the complaints frequency increases, we have to pay attention because we automatically get defensive. But too much is always too much. In the case of the ad agency person, his daughter signaled that her father was absent for most of her childhood. In the case of my friend from Europe, once again, the daughter seemed to complain about her father constantly being on the phone. In my case, it was my niece Kira, who clearly thought sleeping on the sofa was only for tired people. And finally, Renuka has had to slow me down time and time again because I get obsessed with this or that. It could be photography, it could be French, it could be something else. They're not always work related. It could just be a hobby. If your family members are giving you feedback, it's time to listen. It's almost sure that you're doing too much for too long, and it's time to change course. It's okay to be relentless. Sometimes, however, just less will do. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in psychotactics land. By the time you listen to this podcast, we will be on holiday. We'll be in the north of India, in Rajasthan, which is the land of kings. Lots of palaces, lots of food, and lots of rest. But when we get back, the live article writing course will be underway. And if you didn't get onto that course, well, maybe next time. But you can get the info products course, which means that you can put together an information product that is consumable. What I mean by consumable, most of the products that we buy today, we start reading, we start listening to, and we don't get to the end. And that's because of the design of the product, not graphic design, but the way the product is constructed. And the information product shows you how to get the client to read the first line, second line, third line, to get them to slip slide through the entire course, through the entire book, whatever it is that you are creating. Because your goal and their goal is to get to the end, to get to a result. But if the design is bad, if the structure is bad, well, you get poor results. And then you have to keep advertising, you have to keep promoting, you have to keep marketing. And if you noticed, most of our clients come back over and over again. They've been members for years on end. And when I say years on end, I mean we've had members from the year 2003 when we started, and now we're in 2025. The same thing applies to the books, the courses, the podcasts that you're listening to. How are they constructed? And that's what the information products course teaches you, that structure. So if you want to get a taste for that, go to psychotactics.com/info goodies, and you'll get some goodies, but you'll also be on the waiting list because there are only a limited number of copies. Yes, it's online, but we're creating scarcity and urgency. So psychotactics.com/info goodies. That's it from me, and I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? I said that I was overdoing stuff. Well, I've always overdone stuff. It's not just been work or hobbies, but at one point in time, I started eating asparagus. It was growing in the garden, and these fresh baby asparagus, they taste amazing. Well, I'd have asparagus in the morning, then I'd go out in the afternoon, have some more. We went on a trip, and I cut all the asparagus and put it in a little box. And I was eating asparagus. And it turned out to be a problem, but not the problem that you're thinking of or likely to be thinking of. Instead, this started to build up what are called purines in my body. And the purines added to something called uric acid. And then I had gout. Gout is a very painful condition that you get near your big toe. I had this last year, and for a month I couldn't wear shoes. For almost 15 or 20 days, I could barely walk. I was just hobbling around. When people get gout, it's usually because they've been eating too much meat, drinking too much wine, and eating seafood in abundance. I was doing none of the above. And yet, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So as they say, everything in moderation, including moderation itself. Go and get those goodies from psychotactics.com/infogoodies and judge for yourself. Bye-bye.